All right, so in this video, we're going to talk about slow blues rhythm, and we're going to pull from different concepts that I've talked about in previous videos. So I thought that this would be a good idea to take things that we've talked about, the T-bone Walker chord, going from the 6 to the 9 chord, all of these ideas, and pull it all together into one kind of like greatest hits, if you will, or like a buffet, where you can pick and choose from all these ideas. And this is really just designed to give you ideas for what to play when you're playing a blues rhythm, especially a slow blues rhythm like this. So a few days ago, I did a T-bone Walker style rhythm, and it was only 48 hours ago as I'm making this video, but it's already over 40,000 views. And anytime I see that in the analytics, I know that I've touched on a nerve. And so I got a lot of questions, a lot of comments from people asking if I could do a follow-up. And so that's what we're going to do. That's what sparked this idea for this video. So we're going to use that as our building block. We're going to go back to that T-bone Walker thing and integrate that into this. But I'm also going to take some of these other rhythm concepts and pull those together so that in the end you have a composition that sounds great on its own, but you've also got all of these rhythm ideas that you can start integrating into your own playing. So I've got this lesson split into two parts. In this video, we'll go through the first half of everything I played in that intro. I'll break it down note for note. If you'd like to watch the second half and download the tablature for this, you can get those things by going to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP398. All right, so before we jump into this, I've put a link in the description below for that T-bone Walker rhythm video that I was talking about that I did a few days ago. And I think it would be a good idea for you to check that out first because I go through the two different chord shapes that we're going to be using in this. I don't want to repeat myself in this video, so you can check that out first. It's a short video. There's only 10 minutes. There's no tab or anything with it. You can learn the whole thing in about 10 minutes. But you might want to use that as a refresher. You don't have to, but recommendation. Okay, so the way that I started this, oh, by the way, we're playing this in the key of A. I should start with that. So this is in the key of A, so our 1 chord is an A, our 4 chord is a D, and our 5 chord is an E. And we're going to be playing, we're going to start off with an E9 chord. It sounds like that. It's a great way to start a blues, by the way. If you're not sure how to start, especially a slow blues, start with the 5 chord, whatever that song is, and then go right into the 1 chord. It's a real nice way to set it up, and then it's like a tension and a release. Okay, so I'm making that chord here. Now, I covered this in that T-bone video, the two different 9 chord shapes, but this is the one played off of the A chord shape. So even though I'm playing an E chord here, if we think of that in terms of shapes from the cage system, that's the A chord shape. So where my index finger is, that's where I'm going to connect this 9 chord. And again, talked about in that other video. Okay, so we start with that, just playing the 9 chord, E9, and then going right into this A9. Now I'm calling this an A9 with a C sharp in the bass. That's how I think of it. I know that that's also a C sharp double diminished. It's also a C sharp minor 7 flat 5. There's different ways you could look at it, but I don't want to say C sharp because we're playing in the key of A. So to me, this is just an A9. There's an A9 chord, right? But it's got the C sharp in the bass. Okay, so after I played the 5 chord, I walked in, started to half step up and walk down. And then I followed that up with a nice little fill lick. Let me show you how to play it first. So we're going to slide from the 5th fret to the 6th fret on the 3rd string. And then I'm going to bar here on the 5th fret, play strings 2, 1. So we have, that's just your A chord, right? It's just the top 3 strings, a little triad. Pinky goes down on the 8th fret 2nd string to make an A7. And that's all I was picturing in my mind, was tracing the notes of that A7. So that's one really easy way to create a fill lick. Just picture the chord and play those notes out of the chord. So from the start, I think I came back to that 5th fret 1st string. And then we go to the 4 chord. It's the same shape as we played for the E9. We're just playing it here now. But we started a half step up. All right, so from the beginning we have. Okay, now after I play the 4 chord, then I'm going to play the 4 sharp diminished 7 chord, which is the D sharp diminished 7. And I talked about that in EP396. So if you want a refresher on working diminished chords into your blues, you can check out that lesson. But I wanted to just pull all these concepts together. These are things we've talked about in the past. Now I'm playing this in a different position. Before I showed you how to play it up here, which we'll actually do here in a minute, but I'm going to play it in another spot just to give you another idea. So if you think of your D chord, now remember we're playing the D sharp diminished 7, so play a D chord using the A shape like this. And then if you were to play it like this, where you've got your pinky and your ring finger on the 7th fret, index fingers on the 5th fret, 3rd string, that would be a D7 chord. Now you can take your middle finger and add it to the 6th fret 5th string to play that D sharp, and then when you play them all together, you have that D sharp diminished 7. And remember what we talked about in EP396, when you play a diminished 7 chord, you can always slide it up 3 frets and play that same chord. It's just played in a different voicing. So that's a D sharp diminished 7, that's a D sharp diminished 7. And that's exactly what I did here. And then I came back to the T-Bone Walker chord, which is here, that A9 chord. Okay, so from the beginning, building up to this, right? Here's your sharp diminished. Sloppy, but I played it. All right, then back to the A9, and then I went. So that's taking that same chord, and we're just sliding it down a half step, up a half step, back down. And again, this is that chord shape that was talked about in the previous video, that T-Bone Walker video. And if you're a premium member, you have the tablature, which, you know, all of this is tabbed out for you to make that easier. And by the way, if you're not a premium member, look into it. Super affordable, in-depth lessons like this every week, and you have access to the whole archive. Okay. Now after the second time I went, so I let my pinky come down here and just bar and hit that 1 string, that high E string, which is barred there on the 5th fret, which is an A note. Just a really cool technique. I've seen T-Bone do that. And then after that, we're going to go back into the 4 chord. So the first time it was a quick change from the 1 to the 4, and now we're going into the 4 chord. But we're starting a half step up and going into that D9 chord. All right, building it from the beginning. I like to keep going back and repeating. It just helps, I think. Okay, there's your 5 chord. Starting to make sense. Now once we get to the D9, the 4 chord, then I went threw in a little lick there, a little major pentatonic lick. So I'm starting that on the 7th fret 5th string, sliding up to the 9th fret 5th string. So it's a little box here, 7 to the 9 on the 5th, and then on the 4th string. And then a little bend there on that 9th fret 4th string to land on the 7th fret 4th string. This little box is something I've talked about quite a bit. It's the major pentatonic scale, but you can connect it to this chord shape. So if you can picture that A chord, you know, using the E chord shape, that's the thing out of Cage. Even though we're playing an A chord, you're using the E shape. If we look at where these 2 fingers are in that shape, you've got this box that happens on the 6th string, the 5th string, and the 4th string. In this case, for an A, it would be between the 7th fret and the 9th fret. But you have all these things you can do. Little fills and things, and it just happens in that little area there. So explore that if you haven't. Okay, so there's that. Now we're going to play the D sharp diminished 7 again, because remember, anytime you're going from the 4 chord back to the 1 chord, which we're doing here, we're playing the D9, we're about to go back to the 1 chord. To get from the 4 chord back to the 1 chord, there's an in-between chord, which is that sharp diminished 7 chord. So whatever your 4 chord is, you play the sharp diminished 7 chord of that 4 chord. And again, that was talked about in EP396. But in this case, it's going to be the D sharp diminished 7. Now remember, we just played it here. But now I'm going to show you a different voicing. And so for this, the easiest way to picture this is to think of your D chord shape. If you think of a D chord down in first position, if you were to play that same shape, but play it here so that your middle finger is on the 4th fret, 2nd string, and then you've got your pinky on the 5th fret, 1st string. That's how I think of it. And it's just a little box. You've got 2 frets that you're taking up, and your fingers are kind of staggered in between the strings there. But it's easy to play once you can kind of picture it. And just like we did with the first chord, remember we could slide it up 3 frets? And you could keep going, by the way. Or go down, but you can slide this one up, which is what we do. So we go 4 chord, slide it up 3 frets, and then back to the 1 chord. Okay, now this time when I go to the 1 chord, which is the A, instead of playing the T-Bone Walker A9 over C sharp, I'm playing just a straight up A7. Because you can interchange these chords. So that's just your A major bar chord. Take your pinky away, you've got an A7. And actually I hammer on with my middle finger. That's another little tip I've talked about quite a bit, but anytime I'm playing a blues and I'm playing off of that E chord shape, I always hammer that on. So if I'm playing an E chord in first position, it just sounds better for some reason, to me anyway. Okay, so there's your A, slide it up a half step, and then back down. Really cool, it's simple. You can do that off of any of these 7 shapes. So if you're playing an A7 here, you can do it there. Anytime you're playing an A or a 7 chord, you can go up a half step and back down, especially in a slow blues. Okay. Now we're gonna play this lick, little fill lick, kind of a Chuck Berry double string or double stop thing. So we're sliding in with index finger, doing a slide into the 5th fret, strings 1 and 2. We play it twice. 7th fret, strings 2 and 3. And then we're gonna go. And that's playing strings 2 and 3 on the 5th fret, but we're hammering on to the 6th fret, 3rd string. 7th fret, strings 2 and 3, back to that hammer on. So all together. Now, this is just, I'm thinking of this as minor pentatonic pattern 1. That's kind of my visualization for this. But it's also just the A major bar chord. So it just depends on how you want to picture it. You're just really playing the notes of that chord. That's where it goes into that minor pentatonic. So 7, 5 on the 4th string, and then I just go all the way down to the open 6th string because we're going to the 5 chord now, which is an E. So I'll just play the open E, which is down there, and then that allows me, while that note rings out, to take my hand off the fretboard and go somewhere else. So I could go down to this end if I wanted, but I ended up coming here. And that's what I played. And this is the 6 to the 9 chord, which I talked about in the 1-finger blues. I did a lesson a few weeks ago called the one. You can just go on YouTube and search 1-finger blues. There's not many, trust me. But that's one I did where I talked about you can use 1 finger and play the blues. And so we talked about this, going from the 6th chord down to the 9 chord, using that little triad there. And that's what's going on for the E. So I'm going to slide from the 7th fret to the 9th fret. Using strings 1, 2, and 3. I'm playing the 3rd string and then the 1 string. And then we walk it down 2 frets to the 7th fret. And then as an embellishment there, I just use my pinky to play the 9th fret 1st string. I think that's how I did it. Okay, so that was the 5 chord. Now you would typically go to the 4 chord, right? And then back to the 1 chord. So 5 to the 4 to the 1. But remember, you can go from the 5 chord if you want to work in that diminished 7 or sharp diminished 7 chord. This would be the place to do it. So after the 5 chord, instead of playing the 4 chord, you can go right to the sharp diminished 7 chord of that 4 chord. So in this case, D sharp diminished 7. And then that's your tension chord to get you back to the 1 chord, which is the A. And you can hear that tension release. It's just a different feel to the blues. You could totally do it either way. You could go to the 4 chord to the 1, but there's less tension there. You can feel the tension. There's some tension, but it's a kinder tension than this. That seems a lot more suspenseful to me. So anyway, after the E chord, we go to the D sharp diminished 7, and I played it. Now what's going on there? It's that same concept. You can go up 3 frets each time. Keep going if you want. There's no limit to that. You can go this direction as well. But I just played strings 4, 3, and 2. And I used a little bit of palm muting there. And did it just like that. And then back to the 1 chord with the hammer-on the middle finger. Now after that, I used the classic, it's really more of like a horn section type line. Big Chicago blues sound. And this is something I've learned years ago, and I've used this in other videos, but I thought I'd work this in. You're starting with this is like, I think of this as the Freddie King Hideaway chord. It's a 9 chord. It's another way to play a 9 chord. In this case, we're playing it down here, so it's an A9. But just if you want to get back to this chord, if you like the sound of it, after you've learned how to finger it, look at where your fingers are and connect it. Okay, these 2 fingers are in that 5th fret, which is where my bar chord would be if I'm playing an A major bar chord. So now I can connect this to that. That's how I think of it. Okay, so pinky 5th fret 1st string. Index finger 2nd fret 2nd string, middle finger 4th fret 3rd string, ring finger 5th fret 4th string. It's an awkward feeling chord when you first do it, but I'm telling you, once you do it a few times, it becomes actually very comfortable to come right into that chord. So what we're going to do then, we're just going to walk this note up. But we're going to do it with chords. So that's the 1st chord. And we're going to walk it up 1. Right? Now we're going to go to the D sharp diminished 7 chord. What's nice about that is your pinky stays locked down the whole time. Watch this. And then we're going to replace that with our A chord. A great little walk up. And that's how I played it. 2 of each. And then the 5 chord, but we started it a half step up. It's the same chord, it's that E9 chord. But when you start it up, you get that real big band sound. Even though it's just you, a solo guitarist, it still sounds like a big band. It sounds really big to me when I hear that, the 5 chord. Okay, then there's a whole other half, which I'm going to save for part 2. It's a lot to try and cram into one video. And we're going to be looking at other concepts. So if you like this, come join us for part 2. Let me back up now and play through all of this one more time so you have one final reference. And hopefully you're starting to get some ideas for how to, just how to see these chords now and how to connect them back to really basic shapes that you already know, like the E shape and the A shape. Never just memorize something without connecting it to something else that you know. And that's true of anything you learn on guitar. If it's a lick, if it's a scale, connect it to something so that you can get back to it. Otherwise, it's just notes floating in the air that you'll never be able to use. All right, so from the beginning of this, slowly, we have